What one key skill is most crucial to success in being a spy and in being a manager? It doesn't seem like those two fields would have much in common, and that's probably true. The stakes are certainly a lot higher in one than the other. But you may be surprised to hear that there is a core aspect of intelligence work that's also critical to success as a leader-manager in a business. Continuing our, I guess it's a 2-episode mini theme of talking to military veterans about leadership, this week I'm joined by JJ Brun, the retired spy. We'll be hearing some entertaining and surprising stories from his 2 careers, spying and businessing, the lessons that he's learned along the way, why self-awareness, the ability to communicate and understand people are vital, and more. JJ is also an award-winning speaker, and if you'd like to get in touch with him, maybe book him for an event, don't forget to listen to the end, or you can check the description for a link. This is Leading with Integrity Leadership Talk, the podcast for first-time managers who are working in tech-driven businesses and teams and who want to be more effective, people-first leaders. Each week, you will learn the crucial strategies, mindsets, and practical tips that successful modern leaders follow to be engaging, ethical, and authentic managers who get the best from their teams. And we'll achieve all of this via weekly conversations with leaders, with leadership experts, entrepreneurs, and business owners, people who have already walked this path and have some amazing insights to share, with an added sprinkling of occasional solo episodes and some group chats where we'll have multiple guests. My name is David Hatch, and I will be your host. And leadership has always been a passion for me. After a career spent in a series of small businesses during 15 years in the aerospace industry, 5 or 6 of those at the end of that career were in a space startup in the UK, so trying to launch satellites into orbit, very cool stuff. And through all of that experience, I learned that the secret to successful management is in the ability to apply great leadership. And in turn, the secret to great leadership, it's all about your integrity, putting people before profits.
Welcome to the Leading with Integrity podcast. Leadership talk for the modern manager. With your host, David Hatch.
JJ, thank you very much for joining me today. Really nice to meet you, and I'm so pleased to welcome you onto the podcast.
My pleasure, David. My pleasure.
Great. We're going to start by letting you introduce yourself, tell the listeners a bit about yourself, your career history, or at least as much as you can anyway, what you do today, and why you're doing that, what your purpose behind it is.
Well, thank you, David. My full name is Jean-Jacques Joseph Brun, so being French Canadian, and I go by JJ, and it actually came about when I was working overseas in Bosnia-Herzegovina. I was working in an office, and a British colleague came in, and we were just the 2 of us, and he needed something that was on my desk. And he said, "Hi, JJ." And I'm like, Jean-Jacques, JJ? Oh, he shortened it. Oh, I turned and I answered, and I got branded. So it became a working name. If you don't brand yourself, somebody else will. And I got branded JJ. But my family name is Jean. Jacques is because that's my godfather. Joseph because the only church we had in the village was a Roman Catholic church. So I got all the J's. And the last name Brun, which is basically, if I was to translate it, John Brown. But I have 2 careers. I have a career that spanned 20 years in the military. and also a corporate career, which I'm still active in it for over 24 years. So for me, I'm a 3 times award-winning speaker, so I'm a recognized global authority in human behavior, communication, and relationship development. During my 20 years in the military, 5 was with the combat arms, the Royal 22nd Regiment, and 15 was with the intelligence branch. I have 2 operational tours underneath my belt. I've been privileged to be on some very unique training. The prisoner handling and tactical questioning course, which was my first time visiting the beautiful country of England. So that was in Ashford, Kent. That was a life-defining moment. The John Reed interview and interrogation technique, so I'm a graduate. And my claim to fame during that time in the military is that I was the first one selected for the role of a contact handler. And again, another trip over in the UK. The fact that I was volunteered, all I heard is, who wants to go to the UK? And I went, well, I want to go to the UK. Nobody else wants to go to the UK? I want to go to the UK. Well, you're going to go on this course. And a contact handler is a person where he or she is sent into a hostile environment. So for me, happened to be Bosnia-Herzegovina, where he or she has to cultivate sources, that's building relationships by design and not by chance, determine their intentions and modify their behaviors if and when required. So my role, I was going to be evaluated by my ability to network, to build a community of informants. So that I can advise the commanding officer so that he or she can be informed of what's going on the terrain, so that they can allocate the proper resources so that we can maintain the peace. So Bosnia was a defining moment in my military career. The fact that I was the first one selected for that role, and then I specialized in the field of human intelligence until my 20th year. Fast forward, I've started my own training company, which is the DHC Training Solution. So the DHC stands for Decoding Human Capital, looking at people, all of the people, of having a human capital waiting to be discovered. And I specialize in a behavioral tool. There's over 100 different behavioral tools out there to better understand people. Myers-Briggs, True Colors, NEO, the MMPI, the Enneagram. There's just so many. I've chosen the 4 temperament model of human behavior because it's known as the wellness model in psychology. And it's the easiest one to understand and the easiest one to apply. So from today, though I've specialized 30 years in the field of human behavior, or understanding human behavior, I have over 30,000 hours of classroom or of equipping and training people for works of service, anywhere from my university students to the boardroom executive, from virtual in-person led training to my retreats in Cancun, Mexico. So there's life after the military. So 20 years of the military sort of like gave me my foundation in regards to lessons learned. There's a saying in the speaking industry, in the entrepreneurial lane, that your mess is your message. Your mess, your character building moment, your mess is your message. Your mission, if you so choose to accept it, will be to share others what you've learned during that journey, so you can assist and help other people along the way. And that's the lane that I'm in right now, as in 20 years in the military. And today is our last day of our fiscal year. So I've been in business for 24 years as of today. So tomorrow I'm starting my 25th year of equipping and training people for works of service. So long introduction, but it's basically what I do now. You can appreciate, David, that in the military, and specifically in the intelligence branch, I work in the shadows. And after being programmed for 20 years, you need to step out of the shadows into the spotlight. You want to make a difference in people's lives. You want to leave a legacy for others that your life mattered. So I'm in that journey right now of increasing visibility, of letting people know lessons learned so that they don't have to go and struggle through some of the character building moments that I've experienced. And maybe from there I can make a difference for others.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on starting your 25th year to start with. That's amazing. Yeah. So you've actually been doing that longer than you were in the military then? Or doing this, I should say.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Interesting. And I know you refer to yourself as the retired spy. In fact, I've got it on the screen in front of me.
Yeah.
And yeah, I can see why, because spy is an exciting sounding word, isn't it? So my question is it as exciting as film and TV would lead us to believe?
I never wanted to be the retired spy. As I shared with being referred to as JJ, your brand is what people say it is. And when I retired, I kept on being introduced. Oh, this is JJ. He used to be a spy. Oh, that's JJ. He's a former spy. Be careful. I'd be careful if you talk to him because he used to be an operative. So you get all of these little one-liners, and I shied away from it for the first 5 years in business. I just shied away. I'm an interpersonal skills expert, a human behavior, a communication relationship development expert. I specialize in that field. I never wanted to be the retired spy. The media provides us with so much that when I grew up, James Bond was the model. Sean Connery was mine. When I grew up, he was the James Bond. Daniel Craig, loved Daniel Craig, which just made his last movie. But the media projects that glamour, that lifestyle of all the nice, cool gadget. My watch doesn't do anything but gives me the time and the day. That's it. It doesn't have a laser or anything like that.
That was going to be my next question, was what is your watch do?
And that's an ink dispensing device. That's all it is. I can't do anything with it. The James Bond are so fluent and and when with the ladies and I'm not such a good poker player, but it's the media that projects the persona. So you tend to get labeled or characterized or pigeonholed as in, characterized. I visited, I don't know if you're aware of this, but in the United States, in Washington, D.C., they have a spy museum. If you ever go to Washington, D.C., you got to give yourself at least half a day, if not more, to visit the spy museum. And in there, because they have a way of promoting everything, I even have a mascot now. It's like, this is what it looks like. This is the spy gnome. He's got his earpiece in there. But again, the trench coat, the mystique. I never had to wear a trench coat and the glasses. I just remember when I was serving in Bosnia, I could tell who was the special forces. There were special forces on the terrain. They were dressed in civvies, but they had different types of boots. They all had the big watch. They all had the Ray-Ban glasses. You cannot not communicate. You can tell when someone doesn't fit in because of the Gucci kits that they have. And it's just not me. When I was in Las Vegas, I even saw one of these. So when I knew I was coming on the call, and I'm like, I don't know if you can see this, but this is Daniel Craig, and it's a license to kill business card. I'm like, I'm not licensed to kill. Actually, I'm operative 431. All the 00s were taken. But 00 means something in the series, right? But it doesn't mean anything for me. For me, 431 is because I'm the 431st graduate of the INTOP, intelligence operators course way back in 1999. So it's amazing. It's amazing. Actually, not 1999. It was 1989. Yeah, that's the year I got married. I should remember that because my wife is going to quiz me on that. Yeah, I retired back in 1999 for the intelligence branch. But there's no big strategic plan to becoming the retired spy. It's just more of a brand, and it's stuck, and there's some stickiness to it. Your brand is what people say it is, and I've just accepted it and moved on with it.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, nicknames are like that sometimes, aren't they? When you don't, as you say, you don't always get a choice about it. Well, that's the nature of a nickname, actually, isn't it? You didn't get to choose it. So, yeah, that's quite a British thing as well, to be fair. So tell us what a career in intelligence looks like, obviously without giving away any state secrets.
What happened to me is that after 5 years of in the infantry, so in the combat arms, I had a very successful career. It takes you 8 years to be a sergeant in the infantry back then. I did it in 3 years and 10 months. It's a blessing and it's a curse. It's a blessing because you progress rapidly, not a problem. But I was a new breed. I was bilingual. I was computer literate, 6 feet, 200. I was a new type of soldiers back then. Today's technology, the soldiering is actually at a higher level. But I was a new breed coming in. So the new guard loved JJ, but the old guard didn't. So after 5 years, I was very hard on my body, and I knew I couldn't keep that momentum. I couldn't keep that pace because once I retired from the military, I have a total of 3 knee surgeries, 1 major back surgery, broke a few bones, I got a few scars for some of the incidents that happened. So I was very hard in the first 5 years, hence why I was looking to change trades, and when I looked at all the options, the only thing that interested me was the intelligence branch. I thought that was cool, sexy, exclusive. They probably have information or have access to information nobody else knows. They probably have some cool training. So that the whole mystique of it, yeah, I got drawn into it. And I found out that I was very good within that industry, that I had the proper temperament style to succeed also within the intelligence branch. So there was never the plan to be the spy or the retired spy, is because it's more of a job. And if you talk to anybody within the intelligence community, nobody put a gun in our head to join the military. It's more of a trade, a course that you go. You'll graduate, and it's just a training, as in boom. Okay, so you're certified, you're trained as an intelligence operator. Okay, you're a staff officer. Check. Doesn't mean that you're going to be good at it. It's just that you've met the criterions. Okay, now you're going to be sent into a situation where you're going to have to work within that field. So I saw the first Gulf War when I graduated, and I saw the Oka crisis that we had up in Canada when I first came in. Then from there, I got deployed into Bagotville, Quebec, which is the F-18 fighter pilots. So working with an intelligence branch or squadron up there in 433 Fighter Squadron. And then moved to another area after that to Kingston, where this is where I started working within the field of human intelligence, where everything sort of like evolved from there and opened up a whole different world of collecting information. We have imagery intelligence, so they can take satellite pictures. Signal intelligence, we can listen to your conversation, but human intelligence is actually having boots on the ground, where we're actually going to interact with you. And then we're going to present an idea for you to wear the team jersey, if you wish, so that we can also be informed of what's happening on the terrain. So.
And can you share An unforgettable experience from your time as a spy? I'm sure there's been loads of them, but which would you say impacted your life the most?
My first, oh my gosh, I'm getting flashbacks. The first hour, as in the course, the prisoner handling and tactical questioning course, that was in the Ashford, Kent, the Garden of England. Oh, I remember that. The Garden of England is what they referred to it. And the first hour of the course, I was stripped naked, thrown into an interrogation cell, interrogated. They call it a harsh interrogation. 9 minutes. The guy yelled at me for 9 minutes nonstop. Like, is he ever going to breathe? Like, he was so close. I was wearing his breath. And I knew what he had for breakfast. That's how close he was. And I was like, that was not in the curriculum. That was not, where does it say that we're going to go through this? But here's the logic. If you're going to be an interrogator, doesn't it stand to reason that you should know how it feels to be interrogated? I never thought of it that way. A truth spoken is not as powerful as a truth that's been self-discovered. Wow. So, and I was amazed by how much that instructor captured. See, I hadn't answered any of his questions in 9 minutes. After the interrogation, to get dressed, get back in the classroom, I was walking with my head down. I'm like, I'm over my head here. I don't know what I'm doing here. I shouldn't be here. All the students were feeling the same thing. And I was student number 3, and all the instructors lined up and then went through everything that they captured. And I was flabbergasted, David, how much he knew about me. As in, I didn't answer any of his questions, but he knew my triggers for the next one, because he was reading all the micro movement that you cannot not communicate. And he was using a tool called BSA, Behavioral Symptom Analysis. And I became a student right there. I became a student for life. I said, I want to learn more about that. How did you know this? Where did you get this information? How can I get this information? How can I get trained and certified in this? So it takes its roots in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, with the I-axis and cues and all the micro movements that we tend to use, because we're not wired to lie. And when we do lie, we will release clues and cues, or often they will say leakage, and we will leak that there's something just not right with what that person just said. And then it goes into the power of the question. The better you are at asking questions, the better you're going to be at engaging in conversation, the better you are going to be able to lead into building a relationship, whether it's professional or personal relationship. So, yeah, oh my gosh. That base doesn't exist anymore, though, because they built a tunnel underneath it. So that was like, oops. Yeah, but it was that was a life-defining moment. My first experience going to the UK, taking the train, landing at a undisclosed area. There was one taxi. I showed him an address on paper. He dropped me in a onion field. There was like, you couldn't see the base, because you had to climb up a hill and then go down, then you would see the whole base. And it was amazing. 2 fences. It's like a war movie, as in you have to clear one fence, and then the middle part is where the dogs would patrol, and then you clear the other fence, and then you would go down, and then you'd have the whole camp. And it was just amazing, as in this was the mothership. This is where, in Canada, the core, the core as in the branch, as in the intelligence core, that's where we took it from, as in we have our roots there. And it has a rich history, rich history. And it's sad that it's no longer there. But it's just not the same. It's just not the same when we were there. And I experienced all of the different little British cuisine. So it was, my gosh, I need to go back.
You're being very generous by using the word cuisine, I think.
Well, see, I never had like the traditional British breakfast. You've got the beans, right? You've got the tomatoes, you got the mushrooms, you got the eggs. my first experience of eating fried toast. Back then, I'm like, what? I never had curry until I went to the UK. So, of course, at the end of every program or every course, it tends to be the course party or the class party. And going to an Indian restaurant, it tended to be what would happen. And I've never had. And one of the chief instructor goes, "Oh, I'm sitting with you." But he educated me. See, that's good leadership right there. He educated me because I could have had a very bad experience of eating Indian cuisine, right? The curries. But he explained to me, "Do you like it hot or spicy? What's the difference?" I don't know. So he explained everything to me, as in the mild and the and then when it's too, and having that little yogurt and then the cucumbers and how it can assist, and naan. And it's funny because in Canada we say naan bread, and then somebody goes, "Well, naan means bread, so what you're saying is bread." I did not know that.
Yeah, so, but we do know it, and we still do that. So,
yeah.
So there you go. There we go.
Definitely, my first experience in the UK and that course, the interrogator course, it did struck a core in regards to I wanted more. I wanted to learn more about this, and it prepared me for my second deployment. As in, my first deployment is peacekeeping, so that was in Cyprus. And being bilingual, I worked with the Greeks and the Turks because English is the working language. I'm in a French regiment, but the fact that I'm bilingual puts me in a position where I'm with the leadership because I can manage the radios, I can translate, and I get increased visibility because of the skill sets or the additional skill sets that I have. The second deployment was peacemaking. So the first part of the tour was under a British-led mission. So it was I4. It was the implementation force. And then from the 3 months in, it switched to an American-led mission, which became S4, stabilizing force. So for me, being the first one selected, the first Canadian selected, there was some concerns or fears. I did not want to be the first one to fail at this, the first Canadian to fail.
You must have met some pretty memorable characters in that line of work. Do any of them stand out in particular?
I was trained in the UK. Once this was over, I was then sent to London for an overnight, and then I flew into Zagreb. The next day, flew into Sarajevo. Somebody picked me up in Sarajevo. Then it took 2 days to make my way down to Mostar, which is about 4 hours south of Sarajevo. And then somebody picked me up to bring me to the safe house in Medjugorje, which is of a religious site in Bosnia that the Virgin Mary appeared on the mountains to the 3 girls, and they made a whole thing. So we lived in the community, the safe house, and we had anywhere from 5 to 7 different nationalities, English being the working language in there. But my first assignment as a contact handler was a gentleman that the section branded him as the self-declared mayor of Mostar. He was not the mayor, but he projected, he had this persona. He would be what I would call the Al Capone, as in he ran the village or the Opština, almost of that area. You had the Croats, the Serbs, the Muslims. He was Croatian, a descendant. However, he was more of the hardliners. So he was sort of like educated and trained the former communist way of leadership, I guess, or dictatorship would be a better one. But he was big, bold, and in charge. So the first time that I met him, because that was my first case, I had to get him to join us in regards to what we were doing. So I learned the local, the common introduction, Dobru jutro, Yasim Jean-Jacques, a.k.a. And it goes through an interpreter, back to him, interpreter, back to us. And we're having a conversation. And what saved me is, like, I'm not a conversationalist. I had to learn how to ask questions in order to start a conversation, in order to lead to building a relationship, and in this case, a professional relationship. So it's all about the power of the question. And I had memorized the 10 most effective feel-good ice-breaking questions, because I was told that if you memorize these 10 questions, you will always, always be able to carry conversation with anyone, anywhere, anytime. So the first question in this is, how did you ever get started in the widget business? So you have to replace the word widget. So when I first met him, and then it's like, it's awkward if nobody talks, right? I'm waiting for my time. And then I'm like, I'm just curious. You see those 3 words? I'm just curious. As soon as you say that to someone, hey, I'm just curious, the subconscious mind of that person stays open. I'm in. Because we've got so much distraction today. So by asking, I'm just curious. Now he comes closer. How did you ever get interested in politics? How did you ever get interested? How do you ever get started in politics? So I just asked that question, because if you ask that question, the right time, right tone, right person, they'll talk for 10 minutes nonstop. He did not follow the same training, David, as I did, because he talked for 45 minutes nonstop. 45 minutes. Blah, 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 blah. But the more he talked, the more I was able to discern his preferred communication style, because you cannot not communicate. I don't remember the 45 minutes of the blah, 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 but I do remember his first statement. The first thing that he said is, well, you know, I am an educated man. Who says that? Well, in that culture, education puts you at a certain level. If you don't have an education, you're on the bottom. But if you have an education, you're on the top. You should respect me because I'm educated. Wow. So I became smaller, he became bigger. But that was a defining moment of the power of the question. And I use it today to the point where now I actually have it. As in, if you wanted a copy, you can just go to the retiredspy.com, scroll all the way down, and you can get your own copy. It's about a 9-page PDF on the power of the question. Now, I use the 3-4-5 approach. 3 words. Like in business, if you're going to be, if you're going to be that manager, if you're going to be that supervisor, that leader, get good at asking questions. And as soon as you say, I'm just curious, they stop using this phone for some reason. Oh, what are you curious about? Well, you know how. Well, you know how. Well, you know how. And then just finish that sentence. I'm looking to make a connection for them to go up and down. Would it be okay? Then I follow up. Would it be okay if we can connect over lunch? Would it be okay if I send you more information? Would it be okay if I introduce you to someone that could benefit from your expertise? So I'm just curious. Well, you know how. Would it be okay if not that I'm a conversation, I needed a system in order to be able to talk to people. That's sad. It's sad. But I now use it both in business and in my personal life. My son's female acquaintance, I'll ask her, I'm just curious, how did you ever meet? Well, you know how, like I can have that conversation. My daughter just got married last week. So with her male acquaintance. So I'm a dad, so I don't call boyfriend or girlfriend. You're a male acquaintance, you're a female acquaintance until you put a ring on it. So Bertrand, with my, so now he's my son-in-law. So now he's no longer a male acquaintance. So But that's how I would start a conversation. I'm just curious. Well, you know how? Would it be okay if? And then from there, you have those 10 questions that you can ask. And it made a difference. It made a difference. I had to live it first. The truth spoken is not as powerful as the truth that's been self-discovered. So I have to live it. And then from there, it's sad that I had to go through all these tours to learn how to talk to people, because I'm not wired that way. I'm like...
Yeah, but, whatever works for you, right? I mean, I don't think it's sad to need the system as long as the system works. Like, if it didn't work, that might be a bit sad, but... Yeah, and as for the 45-minute answer to the question, I mean, it's a politician, isn't it? I think that's a universal language of politics, is it not? Is talk too much?
Well, he had access to so much. He was a fascinating character. Because you see, I've been published. I have 5 books that I've been published, whether it's a co-authored or I've authored 5 books. I became a bestseller by accident. My methodology is in the book, and they sold 60,000 copies, and that automatically put me in as a subject matter expert. But they have adopted my methodology in regards to how do you go about establishing and maintaining a rapport with people, the highest state of relatability that you can have. But then there was another book that they needed an article or a chapter. There was an opportunity because somebody had pulled out. So I wrote a 2,500 chapter on From the Shadows to the Spotlight. That turned into an international bestseller. Not because of me, because of the other. They knew how to work the algorithm, I guess, with Amazon. So, but that's kind of cool. I got these 5, but I first got published in Bosnia by that self-declared mayor of Mostar. He actually put my name, my cover story, in the local newspaper and told everyone where I lived in Medjugorje. That's like that movie, the Iron Man, when he tells the bad guy where he lives in Malibu. He published my name, my cover story for everyone to read. So when that happens, as in, okay, are you burnt? Well, technically not. He just repeated everything, but no one was taking notes during that meeting. That room is bugged because of the amount of information that I still have that newspaper. I kept a copy of it. And I first got published in Bosnia. What we found out afterwards is that he was looking to elevate his position within NATO. As the NATO talks to me, not to the actual mayor. So there was a positioning here. There was a reason why. And then when that happens, what the section lead decided that, okay, you're no longer going to talk to your Serb contacts. You're no longer going to talk to your Muslim contacts. You're only going to cultivate sources of the Croats, and you're only going to talk to, or you want to focus on all of the hardliners. You're going to be their go-to person. And at the end, that's what happened. They said, you, referring to me as in you, will talk to your general on our behalf. So it provided me that unique approach, and he was just not good. He profited tremendously throughout the black market during the war, but he was in charge of everything. He was in charge of the canton, the Obstina, the aluminum factory. He ran the aluminum factory, and then he was the team captain of his football team. We would say soccer, but over there, right? Football. And I got challenged to a football match when I was there also. So quite interesting.
Yeah, interesting is one word for it. Yeah. I don't think that's the way that I would like to be published if it ever happens. And so I have to ask you then, given that story, how do you now feel about the phrase, there's no such thing as bad PR?
Wow. I just did not know back then.
And what can you tell us about some of the work itself that you got to do? So I imagine there's quite a lot of time spent in training, for example, and the non-training, the real world stuff you probably can't talk about too much. But if you had to pick something that was particularly exciting or meaningful, or perhaps you learned the most from, what would that be, do you think?
A lot of members within the intelligence community, we don't necessarily miss the job per se. We miss the gang. We miss the interaction. Yeah, I have these deployments, but you know what? I have more fun, more memorable events during the training, because we're acluistic, one without a clue. Like, I've never interrogated. It's not something that I go through in high school or university to learn. It's like, no, and you're really not good at it at the front. As in, when we first had to train to do a harsh interrogation, they put a paper silhouette of a person in front of you, and you have to yell at that person for 9 minutes nonstop. What am I going to talk about in 9 minutes? Like, you got to be really creative. I was done in 15 seconds because all of my English swear words, like, I've used them all. And then, so at the end, you know what? I'd start interrogating in French. And when I did have a live event with a live instructor, because this is where you're going to be evaluated, and I went in and I was using the different approaches, the friendly approach, the mother approach, the lawyer, not the lawyer approach, but the leader approach, the harsh, anything. You need to be able to switch and change. And I was sure that I was failing. Like, it was not going well at all. Like, because everything that I was trying, he was not biting in. And I said, well, heck with this then. I'm just going to go French. And I went French on him, up, down, left, right. And I just went and I called him everything that I could call him, and just, that saved my bacon. Because as soon as I switched, I got into his brain. He did not know where I was going. He just knew I was real. And then I was in, as in, because that's what you're looking to go, is to go inside the person's brain and start questioning, and because they don't know what to do next. And that was an aha moment in regards to, oh. So a lot of the character building moments, the failures, if you wish, during your training, this is funny, a language barrier that you and I, or Canadian and British, we were practicing doing an extraction. So that was on the contact handling course. And back then, you were not allowed to be in uniform in the UK. As in, it was a no-no to be in uniform. And when we got there, they just started us going into uniform in population. So we were getting a lot of attention of people looking at us because, whoa, what's all these green people? Because we were multinationals. We had, British, Canadian, Americans, Germans on the course. That was funny. New Zealanders, Norwegian, like, we're all green while we're doing that. And so we're practicing an extraction. It takes a whole day of practice. And then somebody was going to be walking. And then it's not like we're going to grab and we're just going to interact. And then they're going to get into a vehicle, but in a natural way, that it would not draw any attention to us. So after this all done, I get debriefed, and the instructor, the instructor has trick questions. They will ask you, so how do you think you did? And it's like, it's my first time. So it's like, yeah. And he says, and then he said the following: that was complete shite. And I've never heard the word shite. And I'm like, it sounds nice to the ear, but it's not good. Like, he didn't look happy, but it's like, it's shite. That was complete shite. And I'm like, Okay, I'm seeing a physiology of him not being happy, but he sounds nice to my ear. So when I finished, I went back to the class, and then the students asked me, so how did it go? Well, he said it was complete shite. Oh, and they all, but I'm like, okay, help me here. Shite, is that like CHITE or is it SHITE? Like,
it's with the S. Yeah, I'm not really sure of the origins, but I think it's like a different pronunciation, isn't it?
Well, then he said, no, it's shite as an SHIT. And I'm like, what? That's not shite. That's shit. Well, shit, shite, crap, or poo. You f***ed up. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, the language barrier, right? So even the word sometimes, as in it's pronounced different. England has, maybe 5 different English dialect that accents that you can pick up depending upon which part of the.
Yeah, it's probably more than 5, to be honest. I mean, there's probably that many just in London.
Well, I have to be careful because sometimes I'll pick up on the accent and start talking like this, and they think I'm from a certain part of the country. Same thing when I visit France. I'll pick up on the French dialect and then start talking a Parisian French, which is different. And but it's that was interesting. It was a language barrier. But the training, quite often, all the specialized training, because we go through the same challenge of we are egoistic, one without a clue. And it's only by being stretched that we gain value from that training.
What would be the biggest leadership lesson that you've taken from your career so far?
I've discerned that there's 4 levels of awareness that a manager or a supervisor or leader have to be made aware of. There's environmental awareness, situational awareness, self-awareness, and legacy awareness. So environmental awareness would be a moment in time where you discover, experience something new. So being on that interrogator course, that was new. Being on that contact handlers course, that was new. Situational awareness is when you're actually on site. Well, nothing will prepare you, no training will prepare you to ever go into a war zone. The smell, the scenery. But this is situational awareness is a moment in time where you get to apply what you've discovered and experienced in environmental awareness. Because there's nothing like being on the ground and knowing what you can and cannot do in certain situations. But it won't work. It won't work unless you have a strong sense of self. A leader has a strong sense of self. I haven't seen anyone that excels at leadership if they don't have a strong sense of self. Because if you don't have that, you go back to environmental awareness, more training, situational awareness. Oh, more training, environmental, situation, and you keep on looping and looping and looping and looping, and I call that a TED moment, a temporary enthusiasm disorder, because you don't have a strong sense of self. See, self-awareness is where you understand your strengths and you know how to protect yourself from yourself, which will then catapult you to legacy awareness. And legacy awareness is a moment in time where everything you've invested in your life outlives your life. So that's where I'm at. I want to make a difference in people's lives. I'm documenting things like I've never done before. Why? Because so that my son can see what I did way back, so that my daughter, so brand new website, the website's turning into a bilingual website. I'm archiving all these little war stories that I can talk about there on one place so that I can leave a legacy. And I've assisted also in helping people gain their credentials here in regards to the 4 temperament model of human behavior. I'm an executive master trainer in the 4 temperament model of human behavior, often referred to as the DISC model of human behavior. So I'm the trainer of trainers now because of the amount of time and effort or the time invested. It doesn't matter for me which model that you choose to adopt. Out of the 100 models I shared before, pick one, master it, put in the time. You want to be an effective leader? Oh, you better have a model of reference, because you can't lead the same way. There was a course, and people are saying only the outgoing and task-oriented, driven, dominant, direct persona are the leaders. And I said, you're off track here, because there's 4 different leadership styles. So a leader is not one who looks behind to see who's following them. A leader is one who knows who they are following as they move ahead. So for a person that I'm very strong in the directive style of leadership, that's cool. Those are my strengths. My lowest traits, as in the ones that I should be aware of, are my supportive traits. And that's leading from the back, leading from making sure nobody's left behind. Well, that's valuable, but providing them with words of encouragement so that they can finish the line. So in regards to a leader, if you're going to be a leader, you have to have self-awareness, understanding your strengths, and also understanding your struggles, as in your blind spots, because then you can protect yourself from yourself as you move forward. So in that whole area, because here I work with law enforcement and I train their trainers. I work with Revenue Canada, and in their leadership program, I train their trainers. And Canada, we have the Canada School of Public Service, which is the highest institute of excellence for all the civil servants. This is everywhere, as in their management course, their supervisory courses, and they use our psychometric assessment tool in their program. So it's all about having self-awareness. So environmental moves into situational, self-awareness, which will lead to legacy, because we all want to leave something behind, right? And not chaos. So if that's the leaders out there, then you know that in order to be at the legacy, I haven't seen anyone that has achieved that legacy awareness without having that self-awareness aspect of leadership.
I agree. Yeah, I'm constantly talking about self-awareness. It's just one of those parts of leadership, I think. And it's not just for leadership, is it? I think you've got to have it if you're going to be a successful leader, because successful leaders are able to improve themselves over time, which is impossible if you're not self-reflecting, right? Because you can't improve what you don't know is wrong or needs improvement. I like to think that's pretty logical, but some people question that. But anyway, and I can see again in your little model, the listeners probably won't be able to see it unless they're watching us on YouTube, but I like the models. I can see how that aligns with some established leadership theories as well. So directive is going to align quite well with autocratic. The supportive is going to align with servant leadership, probably. Not sure about the cautious leader, though.
They're more aloof. They're more on the outside looking in, but it's like they're leading in the shadows. But they're involved, as in they can see the back, they can see the front, they can see the center. They just make sure that everyone's following the procedures or the protocols. But in leadership, like that self-declared mayor of Mostar, the power of the question provided me an opportunity to engage into a conversation, and he kept on talking and talking. And the more he talked, the more he revealed his preferred communication style. So for me to build a professional relationship, I needed to match his preferred communication style. It was not about me. It was about the other person. Same thing for a leader. So if you're more outgoing and very much task-oriented, task-focused, you're known as the driven persona. If you're more outgoing and people-oriented, well, you're known as the inspiring persona because of that enthusiasm, that energy. You're people magnet. They're just naturally drawn to you. If you're more reserved and people-oriented, you're known as the supportive persona. You are by far the nicest person that people will ever meet in their life. And if you're still reserved, however, very much task and focused, you tend to be more of the cautious persona, often referred to as the smartest or the wisest person. So we have these 4 main personas or traits in us to a lesser or greater degree. You're not a letter, you're not a color, you're not a symbol, you're a beautiful blend of these 4 traits. But the self-declared mayor Mostar, was he more outgoing or is he more reserved? So for me, if I'm looking to decode one's preferred communication style, so I have the 2 P's, so I can share that with your audience. Always look for the first P is the pace perspective. Are they fast paced? Are they slower paced? You cannot not communicate, so pay attention. they talk fast? Do they talk slow? Do they talk loud? Talk softly, right? The physiology will also provide you. Are they outgoing? They're more reserved in their physiology. You cannot not communicate. That's known as the pace perspective. So that self-declared mayor had a higher pace perspective than a lower pace perspective. He's a little bit more outgoing and reserved. And it's not like 100% and 0%. It's like a little bit more he was about 55, 60% more outgoing and 35, 40% more reserved. Then the second P is the priority perspective. Priority as in towards task, getting things done, or towards interacting, socializing, being with people. He was all about the task. With the words that he chose to use, you could really tell as in it's not going to be small talk or chit chat. We're talking about meaningful things and getting things done. Perfect. So I saw that he was very strong in that directive or that driven persona, and also some of that cautious persona. So I know that if you're more from that driven persona, I need to communicate in a firm manner. If you're more on the inspiring, I need to communicate to you in a fun manner. If you're more on that supportive side, I need to communicate in a friendly manner. And if you're more cautious, if that's your style, I need to communicate to you in a factual manner when connecting with people matters. So it's easy to the two P's to discern a start point. Whenever in doubt, you're going to go and be friendly. You're going to be going. So when I first met that self-declared, I was operating into that because I didn't know who he was. I didn't have a chance. And I was talking that language, able to say the same thing in a different way. Like, how do you present an idea as a leader? How do you present an idea in order to gain buy-in? Decoding one's preferred communication style. How do you decode somebody's preferred communication style? The two P's, pace perspective, priority. Give you a start point to be firm, fun, friendly, or factual. In his case, I started in the friendly. And after a while, he got tired of me. And he would look at me. We would no longer look at the translator, and he would speak in English. And because I still remember today, he goes, I know who you are, and I know what you do. And I'm like, crap, what does that mean? So I go back into the friendly and trying to do my cover story and get more credibility and blah, blah, blah. And again, now he puts his hand up. He goes, I know who you are, and I know what you do. So that was strike number 2. And I'm like, well, it's not going to be strike number 3. And when he said that, then I said, okay, well, let's get down to business then. I went from friendly to firm. And there is where we were able to build a relationship, a professional relationship. He wanted to be known as the go-to. I wanted to have access to his circle of influence. And he was in charge. He was big, bold, and in charge of everything. And it was by matching his preferred communication style that I was able to build that relationship. Same thing with your audience. As in, self-awareness is understanding that people don't do things to you, they do things for themselves. They don't do things to you, they do things for themselves. So what does that mean? Learn to decode one's preferred communication style. Then learn to say the same thing in a different way so that you can gain some buy-in, so that you can influence people to your desired outcome in a firm, fun, friendly, or factual manner. So that's what having a model of reference will add to a manager, supervisor, or anyone in a leadership role. It really assists them in being able to say the same thing in a different way.
Yeah, it's a really interesting model and approach, and I can see immediately how useful that would be for any leader, particularly for a new manager or a new leader, maybe someone who's moved to a new company, new role. I mean, one of the biggest challenges there is building that rapport with people in your team, isn't it? Straight away, you've just given everyone a really nice framework to do that. So thanks. So I'm just conscious of time. I must say I've been listening rapidly. It's been very hard to stop you and change subject because it's so interesting. A couple of questions I would like to get into though, if we can. So the first one, I think, is what is the biggest mistake that a leader can make
self-awareness. The 4 levels of awareness. I wish I would have known this in high school. The more you know about yourself, the more you can be true and authentic and not be influenced by outside influences. When you don't have a good self-esteem, self-worth, anxiety creeps in. You question your existence. Pushed to an extreme, you may want to even take your life.
If you could go back in time, say to the beginning of your career, what advice would you give your younger self?
When I was in high school, your parents, your relatives, your friend would always ask, so what do you want to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? And they have, your parent wants you to be an engineer. They want you to be a doctor, a lawyer, all these career paths. And I come from an entrepreneurial family. And my dad would always say, make sure you get yourself a good, secure federal job, because he was an entrepreneur. He had a gas station, he had a sawmill, had a wood chip business. But it was hard. It's hard being an entrepreneur. But he would see people, working for the government, knocking off work at an early. My dad would leave at 7 o'clock in the morning, would come back at 7 o'clock at night. So I got those working habits from him. But in government, Friday afternoon, they're off, they're back, and he was a little bit jealous, I think, in regards to that lifestyle that they had. So I just remember in high school, I had a very low self-esteem of myself until I discovered sports. Playing football, playing basketball. I was a shot putter for the high school. I became a shot putter also for the university, Laurentian University. So for me, I was going into that sports lane, but I was not in the proper program. As in being in phys ed, that means that you're going to be a teacher. I never wanted to be a teacher. I never wanted to go back to being that professor in school and teach phys ed. I should have been in the SPAD program, which is the business of sports. How do you run a hockey team? How do you manage a hockey team? How do you manage the Olympics? The business of sports. That, because I had that entrepreneurial side, that would have been a better fit. But I had a fight with Dad, and I left university. I joined the military. I was tired of being told what to do. And you joined the military? Yeah, I was 19 and very naive at that time. But I was wired for the military. I had that persona that they were looking for. So I thrived. I had a very, very successful career in the military, and got 2 advanced promotions, 2 operational tours. So military wasn't bad for me, as in it should have been nice if in high school I knew who I was, if I knew my talents, my strengths, and my blind spots. So for me, that would be one thing if I was to go back. I wish I knew more about. And like this model that I studied in, well, I want to make sure that my kids, because I learned about that model when I was coming close to 40, is when I learned about that model. I was reading, but I've never got trained or certified in the model. I was just reading books on the different personas out there, and this because there's a lot of literature out there. And sure would have been nice. Shoulda, coulda, woulda. Yeah, sure would have been nice. But now I was in a position where, well, I've lived this. Your mess is your message. Well, that was my mess. Your mission, if you so choose to accept it, is to share with others. So I shared it with my son and my daughter at their young age, so that when they do hit high school, they didn't have to live what I lived. My daughter did a self-assessment, an audit, and it produced close to a 40-page computerized report on her. 1/3 of the report was my biggest concern, David, is that I was going to raise my daughter as a drill sergeant. like, you know, when the only instrument you have is a hammer, you see everybody as a nail, right? I don't know who's the author that made that. Is it Maslow? Someone made reference to this, that if you only have a hammer, you see everybody as a nail. And I did not want to nail my son, my daughter to the post. I didn't want to parent them in that military fashion, if you wish, or based on my temperament style. So when she did the assessment, 1/3 of the reports for the child. So I would read the report to her, and it raised her self-esteem and her self-worth, that she is beautifully made, has all these talents, there's nothing wrong with her, etc. The second third of the reports for me as the parent, this is your child. This is how to parent to the traits of your child. Oh my gosh. Sure would have been nice if dad had that report when I was, but there's a reason why you go through these character building moments. And then the last third of the report is for the teacher. Here's your students. Here's how to teach to the traits of your student. So I would always photocopy that last part of the report and give that to all of her teachers when she was going to school. So it made a difference for them, because one day my daughter was walking from school and her best friend was on one side of the road and she was walking from the other. And you could tell they're no longer talking, that they had a fight. When she came into the house, I was like, "Oh, Mickey, are you okay?" Mickey's her little nickname. "Mickey, are you okay?" "Did you and Melissa have a fight?" "Oh, Dad, it's okay. Her deep persona is out of control. She'll be fine tomorrow." Talk about protecting yourself from yourself, that knowing that it's not me, it's the other person. They're just having a bad day. It's okay. Tomorrow's going to be another day. Wow. As opposed to absorbing. So life provides you these character building moments, but that you can also then make a difference in applying what you've learned. So for me, if I was to go back, it should have been nice. But then again, maybe I needed to go through it so that others don't have to go through it. And I do see myself as I pioneer a lot of new things. I did that in the military, and I succeeded. So for me, failure is just an opportunity to learn and to grow, and then and apply what you've learned, and then you get better at it, and you get better at it, and get better at it. There's about 5 years ago, I did a program called Enhanced Investigative Interviewing. So it's a behavioral-based program of how to interview, debrief, and elicit information from people. There was a student on that course 5 years ago. He reaches out to me because I've stopped teaching him. I get bored. It changed his whole life. Now he's in charge of his department. Now he wants everybody trained because he still uses it. That was 5 years ago. You're still every day. Really? And I'm like, oh. And it goes, well, I got 16 people. Can you train them? Okay. We're putting back the program. And it's like, okay, well, let's update everything. So because of the majority of people that are in a interviewing, debriefing profession, they don't tend to have any formal training in interviewing and debriefing. You go through a job interview, and when you go through a job, they're not trained in human resource, are not trained in conducting an interview. And so you go through that stoic face, and they just look at you with no emotions. They don't give you any energy when you're answering. So it's quite fascinating. Up here in Canada, the Governor General, they give you, it takes 2 years for you to be honored with a medal from the Governor General. They spent 2 years of researching, interviewing everyone around to make sure that there's no skeletons in the closet. And she was sharing with me that we have no formal training in interviewing or debriefing. We're just basically whatever the other person told us to do is what we do. And I'm like, wow. So I designed a behavioral base. Like by decoding one's preferred communication style, you now can interview or debrief them according to how they're wired. So it's all about building relationship first. How do you do that? Well, that's the rapport ladder. How do you establish and maintain rapport? So then I designed that because it's a teachable model. People can actually memorize the rapport ladder because there's 4 rungs: listening, observing, discerning, and speaking.
Yeah, so quite a lot to unpack in that last answer. I think the thing that stuck out to me the most is when you're talking about, I wish I'd known. And it makes me think it's the eternal like time machine dilemma, isn't it? Like everyone, who wouldn't want the ability to travel back in time and change something in their past? But then if you really think about it deeply, if you're relatively happy with the way your life is right now, there's always that 1 or 2 things you wish you'd done differently at the time. But if you change that, who knows what would have happened differently? And you might have ended up not being as happy as you are now. So for me, I'm definitely a don't rock the boat person when it comes to the time travel dilemma.
It's all part of learning and growing. There's no accident. Life happens to you or life happens for you. So the for you is more of a growth mindset than a fixed mindset. A leader needs to be on a growth mindset. You don't have to, you get to. I don't have to bring my daughter to dance recital. I get to bring my daughter to dance recital. I don't have to empty the dishwasher. I get to empty the dishwasher. It's a different mindset. And you don't take things so personal. And it's just, life provides you these opportunities. So, and it's short. Like I'm 60 years now on this planet. So I have less of a runway than when I first started. So you do want to make a difference, that your life matters. You want to leave your mark, if you wish, with the time that you have. So I know for me, there's a window, and I'm like, yeah. And now it's like, I still got 10 more years in me. I got 10 more years of making a difference, of traveling and sharing and equipping people for works of service. I'm not done. Some of my colleagues are retiring, and like, retiring? There's just so much more to do. And I'm like, nah, it's like, life is fun. There's just so much for us to be able to impact others. I wouldn't have met you, David. And the offer's here. You're in Ottawa. You're going to visit Canada a few years ago. Don't forget. Just Google the retired spy and then reconnect. And then from there, I will tour you, Ottawa. I will be your guide so that you get the insight, and you'll see the British influence that we have.
I was just thinking of the irony of calling yourself the retired spy when you're talking about how you don't really want to retire ever.
Your brand is what people say it is. So I'm like, I accepted it.
Yeah.
Leadership Heroes.
Last question, my favorite question that every guest is always asked. I call it Leadership Heroes. So the question is, if you had to pick one person, and they can be anyone you like, alive, dead, past, present, real or fictional, who would perfectly embody leadership in your opinion, who would that person be and why?
That's a good question. It's very much a thought-provoking question. The first person, I go back to, my father was an influencer. The word hero, I'm not a big fan of the word hero. It just has a different definition. Serving in the military, and when people find out that you served in the military, and I receive as, and they thank you for your service. But when they refer to you as a hero, and I'm like, I'm no hero. It's more of, who are the mentors out there that I listen to, or that guides me towards being a better person. So my father passed away a few years ago, so I would say he was definitely a mentor. There's 2 people that comes to my mind right now. Michael Hughes here up in Canada, that really assisted and helped me to transit from the military to the civilian side, to start my own business. Great mentor, a a leader in the community. He's the networking guru, Canada's networking guru. So he's a very good role model, an influencer, leader, a mentor, friend. In the States, it would be Dr. Robert A. Rome, the president, still president of Personality Insights, that I met back in September of 1999. I'm going to be with them in 2 weeks. I'll be in Cancun with them. So he's now more of a sage, a sage. Do you say sage or sage? S-A-G-E.
I think we would say sage, but then it's also a herb, isn't it?
Well, it's just that he's at that state that the amount of wisdom and insights that comes from him, and he remembers history, he remembers things. He's very good at this and remembers people's name and what he learned. So I would say Dr. Robert A. Rome would be one of those, well, he still is a mentor, an influencer, a leader within the community. For the living, elsewhere, I'm just reminded of the wisest man who ever lived. So Solomon is often referred to as the wisest man who ever lived. So I've studied that book, the book of Proverbs, because it has like 31 chapters. It's kind of funny, 31 days in a month, like you could read it over and over, and I remember that. And it's just common sense living is found in there. So there's a lot of things out there, and I'm not looking to be religious. It's more of you need to have a spiritual side of you to be an effective leader. There's life balance. So spirituality is one of the areas that we look into when we do goal setting in regards to where you're at. I found out the hard way that there is a God and it's not me, or I was informed that it's not me, because when you're very young, as in you just think that you're everything, but at the end you're not. And it's like, I don't take myself too seriously. Probably why I keep that JJ, the retired spy. I don't take myself too seriously. There's some great people that really made a difference. How can you read a book and still get insights from that book, from all those years that it's been written? So you've got a lot of authors out there that, Napoleon Hill series. Yeah, oh my gosh, that's such a good question, David. So yeah, for in regards to the living, I would say Michael Hughes and Dr. Robert A. Rome. Outside are people that wrote books that are still impactful today, and Solomon's writing in there are very insightful. The word insight, if you were to decode it, insights, the ability to see things others overlook. Wow. I'm glad you don't have too many of these thought-provoking questions.
That one's always the most difficult one, but that's deliberate to an extent. So
it's, do all the other...
Yeah, people do struggle with it sometimes. I think I've had a few people who've had similar views to you on the use of the word hero, and I totally see where that's coming from. But at the same time, it's a nicer phrase, isn't it, than having to use several other words to mean the same thing. And I'm quite lazy about that sort of thing. So there we go. But I like your choices as well, particularly because a lot of the answers I get is people from history, where anyone from history, there's always a bit of a grey area, isn't there, about what do their contemporaries actually think of them? Are they really that great? Were they really that knowledgeable? Were they even that great a leader? How are we ever going to know? Particularly the further back you go, the worse that problem gets. And it's just a bit abstract. Some of the fictional characters we've had have been quite entertaining, but that's probably it. Although they're nice as well because they're an aspirational thing rather than a real world thing. And sometimes that is useful as well. What's a lot rarer is what you've just given us, which is people you've actually interacted with, people that you personally have learned something from in a real world setting. And so I think that's really good. Makes it really difficult for me to comment on them because I don't know them. But the important thing is that you do, and you've learned something, you've gained something, and that whole conversation you've just had about the source of wisdom and finding that insight in life, I think that's really important and powerful, because we get tied up, I think, quite a lot in thinking that knowledge or wisdom has to be somehow complicated or like these big grand ideas, when quite often it doesn't. It can be a simple truth, but just being able to see that when others have overlooked it, exactly as you've said. So yeah, really, really love all of that. And finally, just to round us up at the end, I've no doubt the listeners will have been as captivated as I have by the stories that you've told us today. Thank you so much for that. But if any of them would like to get in touch with you, learn more about what you do, would you like to point them towards a website or book or similar, or both?
If ever yourself, David, or anybody from your audience wanted to connect, on the website, there is a little area where you can actually see my calendar, and you can get a complimentary 30 minutes, whatever is keeping you up. Any questions that people have, your listeners may have, you can reach me there. The retirespy.com is, and then there's a little button on the top. You'll see my calendar. Now, just remember, I'm from Ottawa, Canada, so Eastern time, like you've noticed, David, because I think our first time I was getting it up at 4:00 my time to do.
I just thought you were really super keen. That was all. But
yeah. Well, I've been up early in the morning. I'm okay
sure
with that. But if all your listeners, if they do want to connect, just know that it's Eastern time in there. I'm happy. Complimentary 30 minutes, whatever things that I shared. If they wanted more information, if they need more in regards to what is the report ladder, happy to send them more information on this.
Awesome.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, it's been such a great conversation. Really enjoyed meeting you. I've loved hearing all of these stories that you've been very kind in sharing with us. But we've run out of time, so I'm going to have to call it a day. Enjoy the rest of your day. Have a great weekend. And yeah, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure, David. My pleasure. Thank you.
If you are a new leader, a first-time manager, and you are facing challenges in that role, or if any of the leadership lessons and topics that we've talked about today sounded familiar, like something you are struggling with right now, and you would like to have a chat with me about it, then please pay a visit to www.leadernotaboss.com. There you will find a load of resources, and about halfway down the page, there's a link to my calendar. You can book a chat. Totally free, no obligation to buy anything, just a chance to meet, chat about leadership, which, as you can tell, I love doing, and see if maybe I can help point you in the right direction. JJ, thank you once again for your time, which you have been extremely generous with today. I, for one, thoroughly enjoyed meeting you and hearing all of those stories. Listeners, to find out more about JJ, the retired spy, you will find a link to his website in the episode notes, so make sure to pay him a visit. That's all from me today, almost all. Thank you for listening. Thank you to all of you who have left reviews recently. It's very gratifying and encouraging to hear such nice feedback, and I hugely appreciate all of you. I hope you will join me again next week when I will be chatting with Chief Technology Officer Extraordinaire Douglas Squirrel about the challenges and opportunities of leading tech teams, the positive side of productive conflict, and more. And until then, take care and be a leader, not a boss.